I'm going to let you in a little secret. You are not playing enough. Welcome back to Listen to Leo. In today's video, I wanted to again reach back into the past, look in the vault, and pull out an episode of my podcast, How to Scale Yourself. This is one of the earliest episodes from the podcast. And in fact, it was the first episode that I recorded with someone that I didn't really know outside of Twitter beforehand. And so to give you a little context, his name is Reddy. He is all about playing and being playful and how play can open up so many aspects of our lives. And quite honestly, it was a fantastic conversation. We actually talked for, I think, like 2.5 hours or something, well into the night. We're opposite sides of the world. And it was just an absolutely incredible conversation. The actual podcast episode ended up being 30 to 40 minutes because I sucked at interviewing back then. My newer episodes, much more of the actual conversation gets included in the episodes because I'm better. But there were a few quotes that really stood out to me as being incredibly powerful. And so to start off with, I want to just share, I think, one of my favorite quotes from any of the episodes I've recorded.
Social media can be real if we are.
Yes, short, simple, sweet. Social media can be real if we are real. It's an incredibly powerful concept. Social media is what you make it. If you can't be real yourself on social media, chances are the people that you're interacting with are not going to be real people either. They're going to be these facades they put up to showcase allegiance to one tribe or another. But the best relationships online are made with people who are being authentically themselves. And so you find those people by being authentically yourself. All right. In this next clip, Reddy talks about something that I think is not talked about enough, which I think actually is a lot of this conversation. But he talks about how play by nature tends to be destructive, and that's not a bad thing. Let's listen to this story he tells.
Growing up in India, I had an uncle who had crossed the world. So, he had got me this 486 computer when I was fourth grade. And that was like, wow, my school didn't have those in the computer lab. Right? This came easy to me. Right? I didn't wait for permission to play. I didn't wait for instruction to play. And I didn't wait for guidance, manuals, and none of that. I just dove right into it. And I started by destroying it. I started by breaking it apart. I wasn't thinking of it as being destructive. I was just thinking of it being an explorative process.
Right.
Something new. It's just a big box in front of me. Like, how do I know? I didn't know anything about computers, but I knew about boxes. I knew about shapes. I knew about things. By that time, I knew that much. And I was just exploring with what I knew. Right. And I feel like that's the part where a lot of us are hesitant to engage in play because that initial experience requires destruction. Right. And it's not an evil thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not necessarily a hurtful thing, but it's something that needs initiation into play is the destructive process. It could destroy my past perceptions. It could destroy my ego. It could destroy my perception of who I am. It could destroy social norms for me to begin the process of engaging. Like there's a lot of destruction involved, even the pictures on the wall, like one could say, oh, that's just destroyed the pristine beauty of that wall by sticking papers with squiggly lines on it.
Right.
Like that's one way of looking at it. And unfortunately, it looks like that has become the predominant way of looking at it. We are obsessed with order and process. This is how it's got to be.
I think this is a really important point here. He talks about not really understanding what was happening, but he was going to take it apart and he opened it up to find shapes. And hey, he knows shapes. Shapes are great. I don't think we spend enough time taking things apart in our lives, and not just physical things, although I take plenty of those apart too, put them back together even with some success. But I do think that we don't take apart the ideas that we have enough. And this is something I've spent a lot of time on in my own life, trying to deconstruct the ideas around me and see what they're made of. And, sometimes they are made up of just basic shapes, and you start playing with them and you start remixing them and you start making different shapes. And then you start to get insights, and insights are incredibly powerful. And you're not going to get great insights unless you actually bother to take apart the ideas that you have and see what they're made of. The whole concept of first principles thinking, taking things apart down to their most atomic levels. All right. In this next clip, Reddy does a great job of explaining one of the biggest issues I see with education today, and that is how we've designed schools in order to scale them. And it's very, very hard and expensive to scale things individually. And so schools are not made for individual students to excel. They are made for the average student to do okay. When you understand that, you approach school much, much differently. But in this case, Reddy shares what he thinks is the best part of school, and no surprise, the playground.
You have 20 kids in the classroom, all of them are learning the same thing,
Hmm.
right? We can't, if we want scale, we can't allow that individual expression to come. But I think this is where the playground is magic, because that's the one space we still have the luxury of choosing. Do I want to play football? Yes, no. Right. If I don't want to play football, I can go out and do something else. If I want to play football, I can jump in and join the kids on the playground there. Right. There's a certain level of freedom, choice, and a playground by definition is a place that allows you to engage safely.
Hmm.
The machine, the toys, the games, everything is built, rules, regulations with safety standards, norms.
So I love this idea too. The idea of the playground being the place where, you have choice. And that's what I'm saying. You need to play more because the playground is where you have choice. You don't get a lot of choice in your day job. You may not have choices in your relationships. You probably have more than you think, but we tend to put ourselves into boxes and not give ourselves the choices that we actually have. But on the playground, you decide what to do. And I think this is why the concept of side hustles are very romantic and fulfilling because we have the choice. It doesn't actually matter nearly as much if they succeed or if they fail, but it's about the place that we're in control. And this is something that I think we're going to find more people moving into entrepreneurship as they realize that they can have control in their lives and they just haven't realized that they could. The next clip, I think Reddy does a great job of demonstrating a very powerful concept in the idea of the best friend. And the best friend is not somebody that it doesn't have to be a best friend forever. It can be just a matter of the person that you are focusing on with your entire being. And we don't do this very often with anybody. We're constantly attached to our devices. We're constantly doing a million things at once. And so people don't get our undivided attention. Whereas, in the moment, in a conversation, you're best friends because you're connecting on a very visceral level. You're able to communicate at a very deep and focused level. And this is hard to do. But in this moment, we can be best friends with anybody as long as we're both focused on each other. And we can have a best friend for now.
The key factor, from the larger playground of Twitter to come into this concept of like, we are best friends at this point of time, right? We are now, because that's how it is with kids. There's the larger playground, all the kids are playing with everyone, or they're playing in their little circles. You're playing there and playing here, but we all have the freedom to engage, disengage, and constantly move around the playground, right? But then you have this
Absolutely.
concept of a best friend. Now, suddenly there's this one person you share this intimate bond and this incredible magic with, right? And that doesn't even have to be like a best friend forever, but this is like a best friend for now, right here, right now. You and me are best friends because right now you have my complete 100% attention, right? And vice versa. This is amazing. How can we not be best friends right now? Because I'm not thinking of anyone else. I'm not giving anyone else my time, my attention, my energy, my affection, nothing, right? You have my complete undivided attention. So for this point of time, I feel like this is you. You are me. We are best friends forever. For the end of the
Love it.
podcast.
So best friends, at least until the end of the podcast, right? Finally, I wanted to share this idea that Reddy shared. And I think it's an incredibly insightful comment and not something that we think enough about. But it's the idea that our haters are a lot of times our biggest fans. If we think about the amount of time and energy that some people spend hating on other certain people online, we realize that they are putting a ton of time and effort into that person. And what does that mean? It's a lot of the focus. Again, we just talked about focus attention being best friends, right? You can kind of be best friends with someone by hating on them constantly. You're building your entire identity upon hating somebody online. And I'm not saying that, you're not free to do so if you so desire, but the reality of it is, if you're spending that much time and effort on trying to tear someone down online, you're actually helping them grow because social media algorithms reward that attention. They reward that engagement.
It's so cool because you brought that up because the idea of this random internet stranger who hates on me. Now it's amusing because again, time plays a factor here because if he's the same random internet stranger who keeps hating on everything I create, then damn, he's my super fan. Right? Just by virtue of the frequency of interaction, he's now catapulted himself into the upper levels of my leaderboard, right? Because now I'm like, dude, if this guy cares enough to hate on me every single time on every piece of content, there's something here I'm missing. He's just the friend. This enemy, the so-called enemy I'm imagining, is just the friend I'm not realizing I have,
Right.
right? And now this is a movement in terms of my relationship understanding, right? I'm like, oh, now I can take it further. And I'm like, dude, we have to engage. Get on a call with me. You can hate me all I like, but I need to know there's something here that we're both missing on.
By hating them, you're marketing for them. And so at that point, you're not a hater, you're a super fan. So something to keep in mind when you are engaging with people online. Maybe focus on what you want to see more of instead of what you want to see less on. Focus on what you want to see more of instead of what you want to see less of. Well, that's it for now. Highly recommend you go and listen to the whole episode. Go follow Reddy on Twitter or X or whatever you want. And drop a note in the comments. Let me know. What are you playing with right now? Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.